As we start heading through the documentation for Godot 4, we need to look at the Nodes and Scenes page for more info about those things. If you enjoy software and game development content like this, please be sure to support the channel by liking and subscribing. Also, please be sure to check the description for the documentation page. We have seen that Godot is essentially a tree of trees, which are scenes and nodes. Let's start by taking a closer look at nodes and what they are. Nodes are the building blocks. It doesn't get more fundamental. You can combine them in lots of ways to make different things, like displaying an image, a button, play a sound, represent a camera, and so on and so forth. All nodes have the following characteristics: a name, editable properties. They receive callbacks to update every frame. You can extend them with new properties and functions, and you can add them to another node as a child. We saw this in the last video when we made a player node. The fact that you can use nodes as children to other nodes is important. We can use this concept to build up more complex things. Again, like our player. Let's build him again, just to hammer the concept home. Save the current scene as main or whatever you'd like. You will see why I choose main in a bit. Then, opening a new tab, we will click Other. Then we will add a character body 2D. Let's add a collision 2D now as well. When we do this, we see a warning. Don't worry about it, unless you want to try and figure out how to solve it yourself. Double-click on the name of the node or press F2, and we can rename it to Player. Then we save it as a player scene, if we then move it to the main scene that we just saved. Now, when we have nodes combined like this, when you organize nodes in a tree, like our character, we call this construct a scene. Once saved, scenes work like new node types in the editor, where you can add them as a child of an existing node. In that case, the instance of the scene appears as a single node, with its internals hidden. In the case where you add a scene to another node in a different scene, the now childed scene appears as a single node with its contents hidden. Scenes afford customization. You can compose nodes to create custom and complex node types. The Godot editor essentially is a scene editor. It has plenty of tools for editing 2D and 3D scenes, as well as user interfaces. A Godot project can contain as many of these scenes as you need. The engine only requires one as your application's main scene. This is the scene Godot will first load when you or a player runs the game. On top of acting like nodes, scenes have the following characteristics. They always have one root node, like the player in our example. You can save them to your local drive and load them later. You can create as many instances of a scene as you'd like. Likewise, you could have 5 or 10 characters in your game, created from your player scene. Use your newfound powers wisely. Let's create another scene with a single node. Pressing the New Tab button again, we are opening an empty scene. If we look to the left, we see the scene dock. It has different options for the type of game you are making. Those being options to add a 3D node, a 2D node, an interface node, or an other node. These are just presets. You can use them as launch points, if you will, for more complex nodes. And in an empty scene, Other Node is equivalent to pressing the Add Child Node button at the top left of the scene dock, which usually adds a new node as a child of the currently selected node. We're going to add a single label node to our scene. Its function is to draw text on the screen. Press the Add Child Node button or Other Node to create a root node. The Create Node dialog opens, showing the long list of available nodes. Select the label node. You can type its name to filter down the list. Click on the label node to select it, and click the Create button at the bottom of the window. A lot happens when you add a scene's first node. The scene changes to the 2D workspace because label is a 2D node type. The label appears selected in the top left corner of the viewport. The node appears in the scene dock on the left, and the node's properties appear in the inspector dock on the right. The next step is to change the label's text property. Let's change it to Hello World. Let's look to the right and over here in the inspector dock. Click inside the field below the text property and type Hello World. You will see the text draw in the viewport as you type. Congrats. You are a programming game developer now. You can edit any property listed in the inspector, as we did with the text. Feel free to poke around here and play with the text properties some more on your own. Now you can also move the label node in 2D space with the Move tool as well. The tool is here in the header. You could also just grab it with a left click of your mouse while you have the Select tool. With the label selected, click and drag anywhere in the viewport to move it to the center of the view delimited by the rectangle. Next, let's try running our scene. Press the Play Scene button in the top right of the screen, or press F6 or Command+R on macOS. A pop-up invites you to save the scene, which is required to run it. Click the Save button in the file browser to save it as label.tscn. Let's drag this into our main scene. You will see why in a moment. The Save scene. As dialog, like other file dialogues in the editor, only allows you to save files inside the project. The res path at the top of the window represents the project's root directory and stands for resource path. We will talk about the file paths in a later video. The application should open in a new window and display the text, Hello World. To close the window, press the X, or press F8, or Command+, the period key on macOS, to quit the running scene. And before we go, we should talk about the main scene again. Before, we saved our scene as main, but didn't really talk about what that means. The button next to the Run Scene button allows you to set and run the project's main scene. You can press F5 or Command+B on macOS to do so if you don't want to press it. A pop-up window will appear and invite you to select the main scene. I already saved my main scene as main, so there's that. You can choose to select a scene, or use the current one as the main. Since we have already made a main scene, we will select it. The demo should run again. Moving forward, every time you run the project, Godot will use this scene as a starting point. The editor saves the main scene's path in a project. Godot file in your project's directory. While you can edit this text file directly to change project settings, you can also use the project settings window to do so. And that will do it for this video. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And thanks for making it all the way through the video. Please join us in the next one. See you next time.